from the left here. So to match our mockup, okay, we want to do a couple of things. Like I'm going to grab the type tool here in Photoshop. I'm going to click, and I know I want 62 point for the font. I want to push it down from the top and away from the left here. So let's go and do that now in CSS. So in Dreamweaver here, let's put a return in and let's type in our font. Okay, and you can see it's giving me some pre-filled options. Okay, so I want font size. Okay, and you can see it put the colon in there for us. Now in our case, we wanted 62. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to use 55 pixels. Okay, I just wanted it a little bit smaller just because. And I didn't forget to add the semicolon at the end. Okay, when you're new, that happens a lot. Put a return in. We're going to do a couple other things. We're going to type in padding. Okay, so I've typed in PAD, and you can see Dreamweaver, super helpful, goes, do you mean these? And I said, yes, click on top. Okay, and for the top, we're going to do 120 pixels. Okay, remember semicolon at the end, and the last one is going to be padding, and I'm going to do left. Okay, and I want away from the left about 60 pixels. Cool. Let's hit save and make it save all. Okay, and let's jump into a browser and check it out. Awesome, huh? Okay, so that's basically it. We dumped in our HTML, which is our H1, and then we spend a lot of time in CSS styling it, getting it looking how we want. But now is the time to look at what responsive design does. Okay, now responsiveness is an umbrella term used to describe some things we do in code to make it adjust for the different screen sizes. One of those things we do in code, and probably the main one, is something called a media query. Now, all a media query is think of it as a trigger, okay? And it only gets set off when a screen size is activated. So let's have a look at something I've made earlier. So this is what we're going to create, something called an @media query. Okay, and it just says trigger this H1, okay, when the screen size is 768 pixels or less. Okay, but if it's bigger than that, don't worry about it. Ignore this stuff. So that's what it is. It's a trigger. Only gets activated when the screen is a specific width. You can see down here there's a mobile version as well. Trigger this H1 only if it's 400 pixels or less. So let's go and create that now in our version. Where does it go? We're going to put it underneath our H1, so put in a couple of returns. And this is the hardest bit of syntax you're going to have to write, okay, I promise. It's not that hard, but okay, we're going to have to type it in, follow me verbatim. Okay, there's the @ symbol, and we're going to type in media. Okay, and then after that, we're going to type in a set of brackets. Inside those brackets, we're going to type in max-width. Okay, we need to put a colon in next, so make sure it's a colon and not a semicolon. And now we need to decide how big our tablet is going to be. Now you can pick any size here. A really common tablet size or an iPad size is 768 pixels wide. We're just saying this media query here is going to be for tablet, and that's what I guess the size is. Now, as time goes by, this default will change, and you'll find different sites use slightly different pixel widths for tablet, but yeah, it's a really common size, so use that for the moment. But no, it's not an absolute rule. Last thing we need to do after this last bracket here is put in a curly brace. Okay, so we add a curly brace, okay, and put in a return. That is a media query. Okay, now I guess it's a little hard. There's a lot of syntax that goes into that, but what you can do in the future is just copy and paste it like I do into all other jobs. Now, what goes inside this media query? Anything you want to do, okay, but only be triggered on tablet. What I'd like to do is change the font size. If you can see here my version, it goes from left aligned and quite big font size down to the smaller size and centered. So that's what I want to do. I want to say when the width gets down to tablet, I want you to change this H1 to just change the size and the positioning. Don't want you to change the color. Okay, the color's fine, so we'll leave that. Just the size and the positioning. So let's go and look at that in CSS. So all we do is, as long as it's between these two curly braces, so just here, we're going to type in H1. Okay, and just like we did above here, we need to put in our curly braces, put return in, and now we're going to go and style it. I'd like to say something like font size. Where are you? Font size. Okay, I'd like it to be down at 40 pixels. Okay, and remember semicolon at the end. Make sure the syntax is right. You've got curly braces either side of it. You've got a colon there and a semicolon there. So let's see if it works. Let's hit save. Let's prepare ourselves, okay, because we're about to enter uncharted responsive territory, maybe, for you. Okay, so let's go and check it out in a browser. And the way to test it is we're looking at desktop view here. Okay, it's quite wide, but when we get down to 768 pixels, where that is, just keep dragging until you figure it out. But watch this, come down, come down, come down. Looking at this font, I'm pointing at it. You can't see me pointing. Look at that. That, my friends, is all responsive web design is. Okay, there's other things, but that is the main core part of it, is that media queries trigger at certain widths that goes and changes your CSS. Your HTML is exactly the same. Okay, the text hasn't changed, just changing the CSS for it. Okay, and that gets triggered with our media query. Well done, you. I hope you're excited. I remember when I first figured this out, I was pretty excited. So let's go and do a few other things. Okay, so jump back into Dreamweaver. What I'd like to do also is, remember we had to do a few things. We had to do text align. Okay, so in code, it is text align. There it is at the top there. Okay, and I'm going to click center. You can see this is the nice thing about Dreamweaver, is that I don't have to type it in or remember the syntax. Okay, I can just click on this, and all I have to remember to do, what was the last thing that goes on the end of all these lines that everyone forgets? Semicolon. Awesome. Hit save, save all, preview. Now it's centering. It's kind of centering. Can you see it's kind of like flopped onto the centered-ish? It's because, watch this, up in H1 here. So this H1 is the one that gets triggered for my tablet. But this H1 at the top here is telling it to do padding left of 60 pixels. Okay, so it's using that as well. So it's got centered plus the 60 pixels on the side. So we can override that, say, actually, I don't want that. So padding left, I would like to be 0 pixels, please. Semicolon at the end, save, check it out. Now we're good. Awesome. So it's centered. It's a new font size. Drag it out. Be impressed. Okay. So now we're going to go and do one more media query for mobile because nothing much changes except the font size gets smaller. So that's all we have to do. So let's jump into Dreamweaver. So inside Dreamweaver, we could type all this out again, or we could just be lazy and select it all. Okay, media query, including the last curly brace. Okay, people forget that all the time. Go copy or edit copy. Okay, I'm going to put a couple of returns in under here and hit paste. And what I want to do is a couple of things. One is I want to change this maximum width. Okay, I want to change it from 768 for tablet to a real generic mobile size, which is 400 pixels. Now this changes quite a bit as well. There's so many different mobile phone sizes that I find 400 is a really good kind of coverall for them all. I think the new iPhones are 375 pixels wide, but some of the bigger LG, Samsung phones are a bit wider. Okay, so I just make it a little bit bigger just to cover all those phones. What do I need left? I don't need padding left, and I don't need text align. Okay, all I wanted to do was change the font size. So I'm deleting all of it, except I want to change you down to 20 pixels. All right, let's hit save. Let's check it in the browser. Okay, desktop, tablet, mobile. Okay, it's probably a little bit small, but it's so 28 pixels. I think that's what I wanted. Okay, a little bit bigger. So that is our media queries for all of our different sizes. Okay, we're just doing 3 in this class, okay, to keep it simple. And often for smaller websites, that's all I do. Some websites go a bit harder. They'll describe 7 different sizes. Okay, so they'll have 7 different media queries. It's up to you. Okay, but I like to stick to just the basics: desktop, tablet, and mobile. One thing we'll do in CSS, and before we go on, is we'll add some CSS commenting. All this means is that I know, because I just made this, okay, what this thing does and what this guy does here, but I'd like to add some notes to myself, to my future self of Dan, to say, just so I remember what these things do. So with your cursor just in front of the @media query for this one here, there's 768, is I'm going to, on the left-hand side here, click and hold down the one that says apply comment. That is a comment in CSS. Click on it. Nothing much happens. You can see there's a / and 2 asterisks. Okay, but inside of here, if I type in tablet, okay, this just means this gets ignored by the browser. Nobody sees it. It's just there for humans. Okay, it's for other web designers. It's for yourself in the future to know what you're talking about. I'm going to copy it, use it down here, and I'm going to call this one mobile. Okay, so let's go to File, Save All. Check it's working in the browser. If yours isn't, okay, yours isn't going down to tablet and then down to mobile sizes for this H1, okay, you can just hit the reset button. So let's all do that, okay? You don't have to. If yours is working, carry on. I'm going to do it, okay? So you can close down index 1, okay, and open up index. We're up to index 3, actually. Click on that one there, okay? Preview in the browser, and it should look exactly how we had it a second ago. Nice. Okay, so if yours goes horribly wrong, open this one up here, and we've reset, and we've got back to this part here. Okay, so the next part of our responsive umbrella, okay, we've looked at media queries, that's considered responsiveness. Another one is responsive images. And all it just means is if I check out one of my final examples here, it means when I resize the browser, okay, or it goes to different devices, the image is actually resized to best fit it. You can see this background moves here at the top and all these bottom ones kind of resize as well to best fit the space provided. So we're going to look at this background image first, and then we'll look at these images down the bottom here. They're both slightly different in the way we approach it. So jump back into Dreamweaver, open up our styles, and what we're looking for is the hero box. That's the big box that I've got here. Let's look at the one we're working on. You can see that's the big pink box that I've already created for us. And all I did is I gave it a height, okay, and I gave it a background color of pink. What I'd also like to do to it is I'd like to give it a background. Okay, so I'm typing in background. You can go down here to background image. Okay, and what I'm meant to know is I'm meant to use URL, hit return. This is the long way. Okay, images, I started typing IM. This is really handy, okay, all this pre-filling out stuff, especially when you get down to here when you get to pick these images. Okay, and you get to hover above them and it will preview them for you. There's even a quicker way the Dreamweaver uses. Okay, so I'm gonna undo all of that. Up to you, you can type it in that long way. There's some really cool code emit hinting, and in this case it's BGI, okay, so background image, and all I need to do instead of hitting return or clicking one of those options is just hit tab on my keyboard. Can you see it filled out background image, colon, add the URL that I needed, and I'm ready to start typing. Okay, so if you're new, you might be typing out the full thing just to get used to it, but once you get going, okay, typing up the whole word background image and URL, remembering it as well, can be tough. So just type in BGI and hit tab on your keyboard. Okay, what we want to do is I want to grab my image from my images folder. So I typed in I, thank you, Dreamweaver, and then it just looks in my images folder and sees the images that I've got. And I want this one called background image. Okay, hover above it, and that's the one that I want in the background. It's even added the semicolon at the end. So I'm going to save it and check it in a browser, and it's not going to work. Okay, it's there, but it's not responsive. I want it to be all stretchy and fill the background. We do that by using a CSS property, okay, and it's a CSS3 property. When people talk about HTML5 and CSS3, what they really mean is just some of the new things we can do in CSS that we couldn't do before. Before this, it was HTML4 and CSS2. So we're just in a newer version, but it does sound quite fancy and intimidating, but really they're just new things like this, okay? So one of the new CSS features is background, okay, and I want the one called background size. There he is there. And there's an option called cover. That's a really cool new CSS3 feature. Add the semicolon at the end, hit save, check it in the browser. Now we're talking, okay? Now it's all responsive and kind of fills the space provided, gets all stretchy, and it's that CSS3 feature called cover and background size. Cool, so we've unveiled one of the secrets of new modern web design, okay, and it's this thing called CSS3. You see it in lots of parts, but really it's just some new things we get to do that we couldn't do before in the new version of CSS. Now, if that went horribly wrong and yours doesn't work, open up, I'm gonna save and close that one, open up index 4, okay, and that should get you back to the exact same spot, just as a little reset, check it in the browser, and yes, it's working perfectly. Cool. If yours is working fine, you don't need to reset, you can just carry on with your index 1 throughout the course. If you do get lost, you can follow me with these little resets. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to build out, so we've got this kind of top part going, I want to build out these smaller image grids down the bottom here. So we're going to have to put in a box for these images to go into. So let's have a look in Dreamweaver. So these boxes are generally called divs. We've got a div already. Okay, there's one called div hero box. That's the thing that was pink, okay, but now has the stretchy image background. So we're gonna have to create one of these for ourselves. So underneath our hero box, okay, put a return in, and we're gonna type in a div. So we go angle bracket, and we type in div, okay, and we also give it a class name. The class is just the unique name that we give it, okay, and all the syntax should be pre-filled in for you, okay. You can see that as I type the word class, I can just click on it with my mouse and it fills in the syntax, and I'm going to give it a name. You get to give it any sort of name. You just got to make sure you don't use capital letters or spaces. We're going to call ours col, short for column. It's really common to use that term. Okay, and finish it off, we need to put in our square brackets and then open our last square brackets. And just like, remember our H1, we put in that /. Okay, and it finishes it off for us. So that is exactly what the hero box got made. We've just made our own version called col. Okay, now if you are a little bit more advanced with HTML and you're like, man, that's a long way of doing it, I wish there was a shorter way. There is. If you just type in .col, Okay, dot at the beginning of it just refers to it being a class name. And if you hit tab instead of return, it just assumes you mean a div class with col and it fills it all in. So super quick and easy. Or you can just type it in the long way if you're new, just to get used to the syntax. Either way, Dreamweaver is awesome for helping out. Inside of this, I'd like to put in my image. Okay, so I've made the box, but the box doesn't really do anything yet. Okay, it's just an empty box. I want to put an image inside of it. The way to do it, the long way, I don't want you to do it this way because this is a really long way. We type in square bracket, type in img, then we type in src, okay, and then inside that src, we go off and we find our image, then we add alt text, and there's all sorts of other things we need to do just to put in a simple old image. You can kind of see it up there, I've already done it. So image, src, there's the image, then we've got to put in the alt text, and okay, so it's a little bit long, so I'm going to undo it, and what I'm going to do is use our super secret Dreamweaver awesomeness and just type in img, hit tab, okay, not enter, and you can see it puts all of that stuff in there for me. Now, inside of the source, where is my image coming from? I type in my I for images folder. Thank you, Dreamweaver. And then it looks at my images folder and say, do you mean these? And I say, yes, I mean that one there, image 1, please. Let's hit save all, and let's jump into a browser, check it out. And he's in there, okay? He's not responsive yet, okay, because we just put in an HTML image. We haven't done anything else, okay? So, but that's the first part, okay? We put in our image. Now we need to make him responsive. And we do that by doing it in CSS. Let's have a little look. We do it a slightly different way from the first way we did it because the first option we wanted to be a background image. Okay, remember this guy here needs to be a background, so it works slightly differently. So what we want to do is jump to our styles.css. Now down the bottom, I want to put in the style for the desktop view, okay, not in tablet. So I'll put a few returns underneath my top H1, but before the tablet. Now, I hope you're ready. We're going to learn something fancy called a compound selector. So a selector is referred to as that's a selector. So our H1, that was a selector as well. These are all selectors. Okay, so what I'd like to do is do a compound selector. So I'd like to do it to images. Okay, so I want to make all images responsive, but not all images. I want the images that are only inside of our columns. Okay, so that is called a compound selector. It just means images, but not every image on every page and every website, just the images that are inside that thing we call col. Okay, remember we called it a class called col. And now in CSS, you refer to classes by having a little full stop at the beginning. The things that you write yourself that made from nowhere have little full stops at the front. The ones that pre-exist in HTML often don't. Okay, you can see this one here. I made this thing up called HeroBox, so it's got a full stop in the front. But this H1 I didn't make up. It's just a pre-existing HTML selector, so we don't have it. So images that are inside col, what I'd like to do to it, I'm going to put in my curly braces and return. To make it responsive, what I'd like to do is I'd like to make it a width. Okay, I've just typed in WI, come down, and I want to make a width of 100%. Don't forget the semicolon at the end. Now that does most of it, but there's a couple of other things to make it a little bit better supported across older browsers. Let's put in height, and the height needs to be auto, semicolon. And the last thing we need to do is something called display and block, semicolon. Just do those because they help older browsers deal with responsive images. That's the guy doing most of the work, width 100%. So let's have a little look in our browser. So cool, there he is. He's a responsive image. If I scale him down, you can see he gets smaller with the browser, okay, and gets bigger as the browser gets bigger. So it's not exactly what we want yet. We're going to have to make him get to a certain height and no bigger, but that's how responsive images are done. And the cool thing about using a compound selector, where we said images inside columns, it's not messing around with this image up here, okay, which is my logo, or this image in the background of this. Okay, it's just dealing with the images that are inside my column. Okay, before we go and give it a width, okay, to match our mockup, what we're going to do is duplicate it a few times to get all the images in there. So jump back into Dreamweaver and jump to our source code. Source code is HTML. Okay, let's call it source code instead. And what we want to do is we want to duplicate this col. So I want 6 of them to match my mockup here. You can see I've got 6 of these boxes. So what we're going to do is copy and paste the whole line. The easiest way to do it in Dreamweaver is to click anywhere in your image. Okay, and hit Control D on a PC or Command D on a Mac. You can see it just makes a duplicate because what I want is not just a duplicate of the image, but also the column around the outside. Okay, so I'm going to click in here, Control D, and we want 6 in total. Then I want you to go through and instead of image 1, there's an image 2. Okay, down here there's an image 3. You got to kind of click out, click back in. 4. You can see it's previewing it for me. Awesome, thank you Dreamweaver. 5 and 6. Awesome. Let's hit save, preview in a browser. Now I've got that first responsive image, but now I've got all of them. Okay, all ready to go. Jump back into Dreamweaver, hit save. If yours is working, awesome, carry on. If yours is not and it's totally not working, close down the one we have open and open up index 5. Okay, that'll get us back, preview in the browser, back to kind of where we are now. All right, next thing we need to do is, if we look at our mockup, you can see this image is only this big, but in our current mockup, it's stretching to the whole size. So what we need to do is the container that it's in, remember we called it a class of col. We need to say, hey, col, you need to be 33%, not 100% like you are at the moment. So 33% makes up our block, 33.3. Okay, so let's go and look at to do that now. Jump back into Dreamweaver. So Dreamweaver, let's go into styles. And what I want to do in my desktop view, so not tablet, so find tablet just in front of him. Okay, I'm going to put a few returns in. I'm going to put in .col. So I'd like col there, curly braces. I'd like you to be a width of, okay, and I'm going to use a percentage of 33.3%. And remember semicolon at the end. Make sure you've got the syntax right. Often when I'm teaching people, they'll do weird stuff with 33.3%. So just make sure it looks like mine. Hit save. It's going to kind of work. Let's check it in the browser. So it's working, they're all 33.3%, thank you very much, but by default they stack on top of each other, okay, they block on top. So we can override that by underneath col here, put a return, okay, just underneath width, and say float, my friend, float to the left, semicolon. Save, preview it, and now they're all stacking next to each other. Oh my goodness, you are awesome. They're all 33.3% no matter what view I'm in. Okay, so that is it for desktop view. We'll add some padding later on, but that is how to resize our div for our desktop view. Well done. Next thing we need to do is, you can see in my mockup here, it's actually 33.3% on desktop, but a tablet, it's actually only 50%, right? And when it's a mobile, it's 100% across. So that's what we're going to do now. So in Dreamweaver, what we're going to do in tablet here, okay, underneath our H1, before the closing one, because you can see Dreamweaver helpfully highlights it. You can see if I click on any of these, beginning or end, you can see that's the wrapper. Okay, so we want to make sure that everything stays within these two curly braces. So underneath H1, but before this closing one, we're going to say I'd like .col, okay, curly braces, return, I'd like it to be a width, okay, just like we did above there. We're going to say a width of, in our case, it's 50% for tablet. Semicolon at the end. I don't need to say float left already because this one at the top already says it. Okay, we only have to say it once. But when it comes to width, we want to say actually tablet override the 33.3 and become 50%. Let's have a little look. 33.3%. Man, I'm finding that hard to say. Down to tablet. Ready? Way. Now it's stacking how we wanted in Photoshop. Okay, and it's 50% across. Now, I want you to pause this now and see if you can go and do it for mobile all by yourself. Pause it, go, do it, I dare you. If you're not up for the dares, let's go and do it together. Or if yours went horribly wrong, watch mine. If yours didn't and you did it and you paused it and it's working, be very proud of yourself, okay? You have learned lots of responsive web design in a very short amount of time. You are awesome. So what I'm gonna do in mobile, okay, I wanna use the same one, col, curly braces, and I'm just gonna say width, my friend, of, where are you, width of 100%. Remember, don't forget the semicolon, save it, and preview in a browser. Tablet is 50, mobile is 100%. We are responsive web designers of the new century. Okay, I get a bit excited, but hopefully you are a little bit pumped as well, because we're really learning the fundamentals of responsive web design. Everything else we're gonna tickle and make work, but we've got the real foundations done already. And those foundations are media queries, okay? Then we looked at responsive backgrounds, okay? We did it for a hero background, okay? Remember we did a background image and we used this new CSS3 option called cover. That was awesome. But then we wanted to use it slightly different, not as a background, but just as a regular old image. And what we had to do is learn a compound selector, okay? But really the main part was this, where we said width 100%, okay? And the height of auto and the display of block. That is responsive images. And the last thing which we just learned was we said, hey, column, in desktop, I want you to be this width, but when I use my fancy media query, I want you to be 50%. And basically all other responsive changes we're gonna do are gonna be just iterations on doing this, picking a media query, picking what controls the thing we wanna change, and then just doing some changes depending if we're in tablet or mobile. If yours still totally didn't work, okay, and it's not working, let's do a reset and move on. Okay, so let's close down index 5 and let's open up index 6, getting close to the end. Hopefully if I preview in a browser now, okay, so it's all working, 100%, tablet, 50%, okay, 33.3% for desktop. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do is what's really annoying me is there's no gaps in between here. Whereas in my design, there's nice white gaps in between everything. So let's go and add it. It's called something called a margin. So in Dreamweaver here, we're gonna go to our styles.css. And what we wanna do is around the column. Okay, so we've got 3 columns now, right? There's this top one here, which is my desktop, okay, version, the top one. It's also referred to as the global, okay, the top version. Then in here in my tablet, there's another col and there's another col. So what I'm gonna do is to this top one here. Okay, and what I'm going to say is in this column, I'd like you to have a margin, do it in lowercase, margin of 1%. Okay, and it's going to put 1% all right around the outside of every column. And it's going to cause us a little initial problem. So save it, make sure the semicolon at the end. You're getting sick of me saying that, aren't you? Okay, and let's jump into the browser. And oh, it kind of works. So there's a border around the outside of 1%, but because there's 1% there, 33.3% here, plus 1%, plus another 1%, plus 30. There's just not enough room. It all equals up to more than 100%, which we can't do. So whenever you add a margin of 1%, okay, you need to minus it off the width, okay? And there's 1% on either side, okay? You can see there's 1% there, 1% there. So we want to minus 2, okay? 2 even. Okay, so it's 31.3%. Let's hit save, check it out, and now it has enough room to fit. Cool. So we need to do the same for all of them, because if we get down to tablet, okay, it does the same thing. Not enough room. So what we need to do is minus 2 off our tablet. Okay, so let's get down to 48%. Check it. Working fine, all fits. Now let's get down to mobile. Mobile still kind of works. Not sure why. It shouldn't. Okay, we're going to get down to 98%. So it all fits and we can see the borders around the edges. Nice work. Now, if yours is like mine and you can see 90 up there, I think it's just because I've got a beta version of Dreamweaver. Hit reset and it's gone. Okay, happens to me a little bit at the moment, but I'm sure that's just a bug on my machine. Cool. And one of the things you might be looking at and bugs me as well is because we put a margin around this, it doesn't kind of line up with that anymore and the gap's a little bigger from the top. So we just need to add a 1% border to this div tag at the top here. Remember what we called it? It was called Hero Box. So let's find Hero Box in here. Here he is. And you, my friend, get a margin as well. So margin of 1%, semicolon, save. Now it's all looking kind of a little bit nicer because there's a margin around him as well. All right, because we didn't give him a width, he doesn't need to be minus off everything. You can see he doesn't have a width anywhere. So if he did, you'd have to minus off it like we did these other ones. Okay, but we don't, so he's fine. Okay, last but not least, what I want to do is let's look at the navigation. You can see here on my mockup, it's stacked side by side here in desktop, but in tablet and mobile, they're on top of each other. At the moment though, they are all stacking on top of each other. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to say in desktop view, my navigation, I've already made a class, a compound class here to style my navigation just to save time at the beginning. Okay, what I'd like to do to it is you're looking for the one that says navul li. Okay, that is my list for my navigation. What I'd like to say is I'd like you to display, okay, and I'd like you to do this one called inline block. That means they're going to stack next to each other. Don't forget the semicolon. Hit save. Check it out. Awesome. The only trouble is when I get down to tablet, it also stays the inline block and it gets all a bit messy and there's no room for it with the logo, so it stacks underneath. So we need to switch it back when it gets to tablet to that stacked on top of each other method that we had. And all we need to do is find navul li, okay, down here in tablet, which doesn't exist. Okay, so what we're going to do is underneath column, I'm going to put in this one called navul li, curly braces. Okay, and I'd like to say when it gets to here though, I'd like you to now display block. Okay, and that means they'll stack on top of each other. Let's hit save, let's preview in a browser. Awesome. So desktop, stacked inline, and here stacked block. Same with mobile. Okay, my friends, that is going to be the end of this one. Okay, we've covered a lot in our time together. Okay, mainly focusing on responsive web design. Okay, and just to recap, responsive web design, okay, is an umbrella term that covers a few different things we do when we're building a website. The main ones are media queries, okay, where we get them to trigger at different sizes of browsers. Within those media queries, we can do some fun stuff with things like the column widths, okay, to adjust for different sizes and change things like the font sizes and positioning. Also responsive was our images, okay? Remember we made them a width of 100%, okay, for the images. That is responsive images. We did responsive background images, okay, where we did our background image plus this background size cover. So you can see when it comes to responsive web design, a lot of the work is done in our CSS and our HTML is kept nice and clean. Okay, there's very little we've actually added to it, but a lot of functionality has been done using our CSS. All right, see you later. Haere rā. Have a great day.